Beep beep! What is up, ninjas? My name is Sembrald, and today we're going to be talking about the 5 common mixing mistakes I see. Now, as you guys know, I have a feedback stream that I host every Thursday, and now and then I'll do a Saturday where a lot of you guys send me music, and some of that music is top A material, very good. It's just crazy good. That beat was fire. Most of it is going to lie in the center where you're almost there to that A quality material, but there's little mistakes that we do in the mix down of it, which is what the majority of the songs in this video that I'm going to use as examples are going to lie. And then we have the super beginner one, which, you know, you can tell it's super beginner. So at times I question, like, why do you want me to feedback this? I really don't know what to say other than just keep producing until you can develop yourself to the middle ground so that we can give you fucking good feedback for you to get to the top A quality material shit. Now, if you find yourself doing any of these, usually what you should do is you should find ways to really ease up on it, and I'll talk about it as we move along through here. But these are going to be the 5 common mixing mistakes, guys. And as always, if you want to support the channel, you're in the market for some sick ass sounds, make sure to check out evilsounds.com. That's where all my sound design work is, and let's get started with this video. Mixing mistake number 1 that I see a lot, guys, is that you have too much low end. Now, a lot of times you're not doing this on purpose, and in fact you might be in a situation where you're like, well, Sen, in my room it sounds good. The problem is that a lot of us are producing in squarish rooms, rectangular rooms, so we follow the guidelines and we do everything right except treat our room acoustically, and then we buy nice ass monitors, and what tends to happen is as we're hearing music, sound comes out, it builds up in the corners of the room as bass travels through the wall, it goes to the corner and it builds up there, and then you're sitting here and you hear no bass, so you increase the bass, and that's where that problem usually lies from, in my opinion. Now, if you think I'm just talking out of my ass, what you can do is you can play a song in your room in a square room with good monitors, or even okay monitors, play it, go to the corner of a room and tell me that there's not more low end there. So don't have your low end looking like Kim Kardashian's behind like a diaper butt.
Alright guys, so here I have a track that is going to be one of mine, okay? Now, I've done this on purpose and we have too much low end. So this is Span, the plugin I was talking about. Now let's assume I decide this sounds good in my room, you know, whatever, and I decide to send it to someone or play it in the car, and they hear it and they hear this.
Hit you with that 1, 2. Tell me what you gonna do. 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 Hit you with that 1, 2. Tell me what you gonna do.
So as you saw in the drop, there's just too much low end, and you can feel it and hear it. Now, this is a mistake I see a lot, especially if you're in a non-treated room. Now, I did this on purpose again. I boosted the lows. I shouldn't have done that. But this is what usually happens. So usually the simple fix here, and if you don't know what you're doing, I want you guys to use a span like this, is run your track through span. Now, the majority of tracks that are around the ranges of in loves around -5 to -8, let's assume, the low end lands between -30 dB, as you can see here, and that's usually kind of like what I like to tell my students or people, is that -30 is usually where most of the low end lands on tracks. A little bit below that, a little bit above that is fine, but if you have too much of a change, then that's how you know. So check this out right now again.
Hit you with that 1, 2. Tell me what you gonna do.
So you can see my low end's going up to -24. That's a bit too much. So if I reduce on this little thing I did here, that's going to fix the issue.
Hit you with that 1, 2. Tell me what you gonna do. Tell me what you gonna do.
So there's still a little bit more. It doesn't sound that bad, but again, if you want to be a perfectionist about it, we can just reduce a little bit more on it.
Hit you with that 1, 2. Tell me what you gonna do. 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 Hit you with that 1, 2. Tell me what you gonna do.
So as you can see, that easily helps. So I recommend that you guys use span and fix something that has so much low end like that, so that, you know, use that as kind of like a guideline. Don't let it be the deciding factor. Like, oh, it always has to be a -30, because it all depends on the track. Some house songs, I've seen it go up to -25, 24, and it sounds good, but that's because it's not too loud. I almost choked there, you know. So a lot of times if you want to go super loud, like -5, you have to get rid of that low, and you can't have low end up here because then it sounds a bit too much. But that's just a simple trick that we can do there, guys. Usually if you see your span, you're like, all right, and I see my span, I'm at -24, what do I have to do? Well, go into your track and see, all right, what is giving me that low end? It could be the sub, you just lower the volume of that. It could be the bass lines. If you're not using a sub, you're just going straight up raw, no protection there, so then that could also be it. So then you have to individually look at these sounds. If you have, like, you know, in my instance, I have 3 different bass lines playing, and it only happens when one certain bass line plays, then obviously I'll go to that bass line and be like, all right, this bass line here, it's cut. You know, this one, let's say I get rid of that. That's too much low, and this one's giving it to me. These are fine. It's this one, then I can easily go into that one. And again, check it out. All right, so I hope this one helps.
Second most common mixing mistake I see. Second mistake I see a lot, guys, is the opposite of the low end. So, you know, you get your low end right, you're like, all right, Sin, that tutorial was fucking awesome. But then the second mistake I see a lot is that there is too much high frequencies in the mix down, guys, which is fine. You know, you're trying to get as loud as Martin Garrix in the back over there. But the problem is that you're not doing it properly. A lot of you guys put leads and you're like, oh, this lead's not really punching through the mix. And the first thing you decide to do is that you decide to boost the highs, which eventually is going to lead to a mix or a master that will just have a lot of high frequencies, a lot of good low end. But where are the mids? Where is the midfield? The mids is where the body of the lead is going to come through, especially if you're playing in the sweet spot of the lead. So this is a mixing mistake I see a lot from people, that they know what they're doing a really good job with the ideas, they're doing everything proper, like, oh, this is a proper track, but I can't feel the leads. I mean, I hear them, they're fucking loud, but I can't feel them, and they lack body. So this is the problem that happens usually, is that people don't hear the leads punching through the mix, so they boost the highs more often.
All right, guys, so here's the next example. So here's another track that I did like a horrible track start to finish, and here are the leads from that track, you know, already processed, but we don't have enough mid-lows, as you're gonna see. So this is how it sounds like. So you can see here we have a lot of highs, but our mids are kind of lacking on the lead. Now, if we go to a no frequency chart and we see like, okay, the key of D sharp, or you're playing D sharp, where's that power? Where's the fundamental coming from on those leads? Well, we can see D sharp note 622. If we go up to F 698, F sharp 739. So that's the area where the body of the leads is usually going to reside. So if we do a boost around there, let's assume we do the between there 622 and 77, and we do it right here. Look how much the lead changes. So you can see just the power you can get from that. So the mixing mistake I see a lot is that people will have this lead playing with like a big room kick or like a bass, or it could be any genre where you have a lead. They don't hear it cutting through the mix, so they're like, oh, if I boost the highs, it works. I can hear it now. But the problem with that is that you get leads that just sound very... yeah, they sound like woof woof, like a chihuahua, but they don't have the power of a pit bull, like wum wum. So in order to do that, guys, biggest advice I give you is use a no frequency chart. See where the mids are for your lead. A lot of times you're gonna be playing in the F5 range with these leads, so it's good to kind of do a boost there. Those are gonna be like where the power is generally gonna come from. On your leads, as you can hear, if I boost up here, you're just boosting that nastiness, the chihuahua bark. So we need more Rottweilers, so we go here around here. Now keep in mind, it's going to be different for every lead that you get. It's not always going to be like, oh, Sunset boost like that. No, do it when you feel like it's needed. So a lot of times when you have a span, you can kind of see how the frequencies are spread out. And if you feel like your lead has so much highs when you want more here, then that's when you can do those boosts. But that's a simple mixing mistake I see a lot done with intermediate and beginner producers, maybe some advanced. But again, at the end of the day too, let's say you like a lot of highs and you think it sounds fine and that's your personal preference and that's how you want people to hear it, then all power to you.
Mixing mistake number 3. Third mixing mistake I see a lot, guys, is that you're making your tracks too damn loud, trying to get as loud as, again, as Martin Garrix here. The problem with getting too loud, guys, at times is that the louder you get, the more you have to take away from your mix. So if you have a lot of stuff going on, let's say like in trance, and you try and get that to -3 loves, which is fucking loud, what's gonna happen is that it's gonna sound like a goddamn mess. Like you're gonna hear some distortion happening. So you have to remove stuff. A lot of times you have to remove from the low end the louder you get. So here's a track that is just too damn limited. It's too damn loud, and I think if he would have just eased up on it a bit, it would have sounded a lot better. You may be going like, well, how loud should I be then, Sen? My best advice to you is going to be, again, to grab reference tracks, see how loud they're getting, tracks that are in the genre that you are making, and then from there find a balance, like an average of that, and you can go for that. Or if you find a reference track and you like how it sounds like at -7, make sure that, again, yours is at -7. But let's say you find a track that's at -3 and you just like the way that it sounds like. Well, make sure that you have as many elements as that artist, and make sure your mix is as good as theirs to get it to sound loud without really distorting or causing any artifacts in the mix.
All right, guys, so here we have, another song that I've had, on my Ableton projects, but we're going to use it as let's say it's a track and we're trying to get loud, but we don't know how loud we should get. So what do I use in order to find out what loudness I should be at? A lot of times I'm going to tell you is download songs that are in the same genre as you are making. Let's say it's future house or progressive house, and then check, run WLM or loudness unit on it that will tell you how loud that thing is. Now, the unit for standard measuring is going to be LUFS. That's the one most people are going to use when it comes to measuring loudness. So here we have the WLM from Waves that measures that. We're going to reset it, and then we're just going to play it through, and it's going to give us how loud. Short term will be at that exact moment, while long term is going to be the average of the whole track. So as you can see from this, it's telling us that it's around -8 long term from like 24 minutes of playing it. And you can see short term, it's kind of moving -8, -6.97, and vice versa. So from there, I could be like, well, if I'm making a track in this style, this track is in -8. Then I look at another track and it's also around -8. Then I'm going to be like, all right, my track should be around there. Usually you want to use those as a guideline, especially when you don't know what to do. I mean, theoretically, I can make this louder if I wanted to -4, but the question is it needed, and is it adding anything, or is it just going to make it louder and make it sound good because it's louder? That is the issue that so many people have, is that they don't have a good mix sound. They make it loud and they're like, oh, it sounds good. But we got to keep in mind is that the Fletcher Munson curve starts coming into play, and the louder you hear something, the more your ears will react to that loudness, and it will start to kind of mess with the frequency. So it might sound kind of flat, it might sound good here, but when you lower the volume down, it sounds totally different. So that's what you have to be careful for. So watch, if I make this louder, it's still gonna sound good. But the question is it needed? And sorry for the delays here, but the question again is if it's really needed, if it's adding anything else, or you're just doing it because you're kind of insecure about your mix. So if, my biggest advice, guys, is again, just reference other tracks, see how loud they are, and make yours as loud. Don't go up to -3 if you're in fucking trance and no one else is doing it, because then it might sound a bit off. But again, guidelines, and if you just want to make your track that loud, totally up to you. I mean, at the end of the day, it's your choice. But remember, if the louder you get, if you don't have a good mix, the more it's going to start to distort, and some people have it that way and some people like it. But personally, me, I suggest you find a balance where people can make it as loud as they want. They can just put up the volume knob on their stereo system.
The fourth mixing mistake I see a lot, guys, is that your breakdown is as loud as your drop. And there's so many videos out there on YouTube right now on the tip to get your drop to sound bigger, where you have to lower the volume down on your break and have the drop be louder. Because if your drop and breakdown are equally the same damn volume, there is no change in energy. The break's this loud and the drop's this loud, or the break's this loud and the drop is this loud. The problem here is that the break's gonna sound bigger. It's gonna sound as big as the drop, so you're never gonna feel that energy on the drop. It's just gonna sound like, oh, the energy remains constant throughout this whole thing. Think of it as this: we have a bad guy, and then we have another badass looking guy. If one bad guy was between a nerd here, then this motherfucker will look more badass. But if we have two badass guys, then, well, I mean, it kind of cancels out. Negative turns into positive. Positive, negative turns into negative. Yeah, just, make sure your break is not as loud as your drop.
Alright, so here I have an example from the feedback stream. I downloaded the song. I'm not going to give the name. I don't know if they want me to. But pretty much here, what we have, as you can see, if we look at this all, is that the break is as loud as the drop. And this is how it sounds like right now. I'll just play it from here. So as you can see, the song is actually pretty good. Now, the problem here is that it just remains like, you make me feel so, boom, 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 boom. So it kind of just stays flat because there's no change in volume, no change in energy like so, except for that little fill part we have, that the break sounds equally as loud as the drop, and it doesn't have a change in power. Let's just put it that way. The difference is not that much. All right, so it's like, let's say you're sprinting, right? When you sprint and you you start to sprint, you get out of the starting line, you have this urge of power, just boom, and then you eventually kind of plateau out at your top speed and you keep going. Same thing here. This is more of a plateau. Now, if we started from the starting line where we have that change in volume, let's say from 4.3 dB to 0 dB now, it's how it sounds like. You can see the change in energy is just crazy. But if we go back to that 0 dB that we had before, now let's put it back to the way we had it, where it was at -4 or -6. Let's put it at -4 there, just so it's not too much of a change. What sounds bigger to you? Obviously, the left one. Again, back to the badass guy terminology, or negative plus negative positive. But you get the idea there, guys. And there's so many tutorials on this. Everyone's talked about it. Max Vangelli, Layback Luke has talked about it. I'm sure every producer has given that tip, or you can even find it on YouTube a lot. But it's a simple one that I still see people don't do it. And this works so well because at times, you know, again, we're getting our tracks to be really loud at -3, -4, -5 LUFS, that we lose all that dynamicness. So you got to create it artificially. Just lower the volume and then bring it back up on the drop. You can also lower the limiter. So the limiter's threshold can be put down so that it's not limiting as much, and then you can bring it back up to the normal value. Those are some tips there, but simple mixing mistake I see. And I don't know if it's a mixing mistake. It might be, it might not be, it might just be arrangement, but I think this is something that everyone can do in their tracks to make the drop just sound a little bit more energetic.
And finally, guys, the last mixing mistake I see a lot is that there is not enough low end. And I know this is like, yo, Sen, that's missing mistake number one, ain't it? Yeah, but not enough low end, which is another thing that I see happens a lot. Now, this one happens majorly because, let's say you don't follow the guidelines online and you have nice monitors. You place yourself in the corner of the room so you feel all this bass energy because you're in the corner. And then when you play it in a car, you're like, wait, where'd the bass go? Because you just thought there was so much bass that you didn't fix that. Again, this is a simple fix with span. You can measure your bass there and get it right all the time. I've made videos on this, and I'll probably put it like somewhere over here or over here. But this is something I see a lot, not a lot of low end. And that's a simple fix. Just make sure the volume of the low end is up. And I'm going to show you guys this track here, which sounded okay. But when we do these changes to it, as you're going to see, it sounds so much better because the low end is back there.
Look at the difference it does to your track. Look at the difference, G. Anyways, that's gonna be it on this one. You know, like, that's the way it's gonna be on this one, G. Those are my suggestions to Noka. Hopefully he's still here. He didn't get mad.
Alright guys, and those are going to be the 5 common mixing mistakes that I've seen in these feedback streams. I've heard thousands of producer songs on there, and these 5 are usually the biggest problems. You know, there's other ones as well, like, you know, contenders for this would be too much reverb, resonating frequencies that aren't removed, something being too loud, louder than the rest of the track. That's for another video, of course, but those are kind of the 5 common mixing mistakes I see, guys, and I hope that this tutorial helps you guys out. Remember, make sure to use span to reference other tracks and see how they look like frequency-wise, and use it on yours. Don't let it, again, influence you fully, because mixing is more than just, oh, that's the right way all the time. It's very creative as well, and it all depends on how you want people to experience your track. But other than that, guys, those are going to be my 5 common mixing mistakes. If you want to support the channel, again, evilsounds.com, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for another video. You guys take care, ninjas, and peace out.
Well, what you talking about?